Coming up on today's show, I want to run through 5 free agent running backs the Browns could explore in NFL free agency. Now, let me open up by saying this much. This is not me coming for Nick Chubb's job, but is a simple acknowledgement that I think is very, very likely, which is Nick Chubb underwent ACL surgery on November 14th, 2023. That puts him a year from returning in November 2024, far from week 1. So we at least need to acknowledge that even if you are on board 100% like I am that Nick Chubb is going to come back in 2024, there's a very, very real and very, very likely chance he starts the year on the PUP list and misses the first couple of weeks of the season. Now, it is Nick Chubb we're talking about. If anyone's going to come back from a big knee injury like he did and not miss any time the next season, it would be 24. But if Nick Chubb does miss the first 5-6 weeks of the season, I personally don't want to see them run it back with Jerome Ford as the bell cow back. So let's talk about some free agent running backs they could sign to bridge the gap until Chubb returns. I'm going to rank them 5 through 1. Coming in at number 5, I've got A.J. Dillon from the Green Bay Packers. So A.J. Dillon, a 2020 second-round pick out of Boston College. He's going to turn 26 years old in May. He had a lot of wear and tear at Chestnut Hill with the Eagles, but then once he got to the Packers and he joined Aaron Jones, he didn't get a whole lot of touches, so he doesn't have too much tread on his tires. Now, the projected contract I came up with is a 2-year, $6 million deal. I know that's not a lot of money because I frankly don't think it's going to cost a lot of money to get a backup running back like A.J. Dillon. Now, he doesn't have a ton of starting experience, 4 years in the frozen tundra. He started 11 games whenever Aaron Jones was hurt, but he is coming off a career rushing, or has a career rushing average of 4.1, but he's coming off a career low 3.4 yards a carry. When he got some of his most work in 2023, 178 carries for 613 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, A.J. Dillon is a violent runner, similar to Nick Chubb, where he's got ginormous thighs and hamstrings, and he is looking to run people over. He doesn't have maybe the best receiving abilities, but he definitely has some upside to his game as a very violent and strong runner. Now, before we talk more about Dillon and other running backs the Browns could sign, name a random Browns running back. Because if A.J. Dillon comes to Cleveland, it's not going to get more random than that. So I want the most random running back you can think of. No Nick Chubb allowed. It's got to be random. Moving on to free agent target number 4, Austin Ekeler. Austin Ekeler is an interesting back because he should be higher than 4, right? He's been one of the best all-around dual-threat running backs in our game the last 3, 4, 5 seasons. However, he had a really bad 2023 year. Now, the former UDFA out of Western State in Colorado is going to turn 29 years old in May. So Father Time is already catching up to him, and it may take a bigger toll on him in 2023. Now, I think he could get a 2-year, $10 million contract. That's an average of $5 million a season, but he is coming off a career low 3.5 yards per carry. When you look at what his numbers were last year compared to the previous seasons, I mean, look at the dramatic decline between his rushing and receiving yards in 2022 to just 1 year later in 2023. Goes from having 38 touchdowns the 2 prior seasons combined to 6 in 2023. Now, the big scary number is actually not his average, I would say, in this case. I think it's the age. He's going to turn 29 in May. So I did some digging. And what I found was since 2020, which is not a huge sample size, but you take the last 3 years, here are all the running backs that were 29 years or older and average 4+ yards a carry. Raheem Mostert did it twice for the Miami Dolphins. Cordell Patterson did it for the Falcons. Latavius Murray is on this sheet a bunch. Devontae Freeman did it with the Ravens. Derrick Henry last year, but he was at 4.2 yards a carry. So it's not a very long list of running backs. There's only 9 of them. Again, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 4 seasons, averaging over 4 yards a pop, which I think is a good Mendoza line for running backs that were over the age of 29 years old. And then I went back a little bit further, and I found the best 4 running backs since 2010 that were 29 years or older. And here were their numbers. Fred Jackson for the Bills back in 2011, he averaged 5.5 yards a pop off 170 carries. Mark Ingram for the Ravens, he averaged 5 yards a carry, 202 carries. Justin Forsett also with Baltimore, 5 yards a pop, 171 carries. And then we just looked at Raheem Mostert, 4.9 yards a carry in 2022 off 181 touches. So what you might notice here is none of these guys were clear-cut, dominant bell cow backs, right? They all seem to share touches with someone else at a much more generous rate than we're seeing for dominant running backs in the NFL. So it got me thinking, Austin Ekeler might look pretty washed. But I think Austin Ekeler with a lighter workload, where he splits touches a little bit with Jerome Ford to begin the year, and then splits touches with Nick Chubb to end the season, he could be a very nice complementary back that isn't forced to have as much touch as he had in LA. And if you save him a little bit and he's not going through so much contact and taking on so many tackles and hits, he might be able to get a second wind, if you will, when he comes over to Cleveland for the last few years of his NFL career. So just keep an eye on Austin Ekeler. Before we get on to the rest of today's show, I do want to share with you guys some awesome information about our sponsor today, which is Prize Picks. Now, if you're like, Petey, I have no idea what Prize Picks is, you're in luck. I'm going to tell you all about it. It's daily fantasy made easy. All you do is pick 2 to 6 players and then choose more or less on their projected stats. Now, we have no football to talk about here, but what we do have is another MLB season around the corner. So get with Prize Picks today, and you can do some season-long stat projections. I'm just taking the more on all these bad boys. And all of a sudden, I have an entire summer just to kind of keep tabs, keep checking in on some of the players for the Braves and for the Dodgers to see how they're doing throughout the year. And who knows, by September, might be a home run or two away from having this bad boy hit. So get started with Prize Picks today. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS. One thing I also like about that baseball selection is that it's tough to watch baseball for 162 games, but with Prize Picks, you can stay locked in for a little bit longer since you got some money to gain out of this bad boy. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Moving on to number 3 on my free agent running back targets list, I'm going to go with Zach Moss out of the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the former third-round pick out of Utah started his career in Buffalo. Then he got traded for Nyheim Hines with the Colts 2 seasons ago. And going to turn 27 years old in December. I think he's going to get a 2-year, $6 million contract, which I understand, again, this is the running back market. They're not going to get a whole lot of money altogether. But when he was the starter, when Jonathan Taylor was down for the early stretch of the 2023 season, he put up some phenomenal numbers, right? 96 carries, 466 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was a waiver wire god. But Zach Moss, throughout his career, has not been consistent, right? He wasn't what the Bills were hoping, which was he would be the future star running back of that Josh Allen-led offense. He does have some familiarity with Ken Dorsey, so that could definitely work in his favor if Ken Dorsey feels like he'd be a good fit for what they want to do offensively. And I think this could be a perfect bridge until Nick Chubb returns, right? Zach Moss is not too old, right? It's like Goldilocks here. Not too old. Going to turn 27 in December, so he'll enter the year 26. When he was a starter last year, when Jonathan Taylor was down, he excelled as he got more carries. And he's also not too expensive. So we are checking a lot of boxes here because you're not getting yourself into a long-term commitment with any running back right now. 2 years, $6 million. You can get out of it after 1 year if you really wanted to. And if you need to start for the first month and a half of the year until Nick Chubb returns, we saw him do a very good job of that last year in Indianapolis. Now, before we get to the next 2 running backs on my list, reminder to subscribe to the channel because we have free daily videos. The latest news and rumors, free agency buzz, and trade rumors are going to start heating up as we get closer to the start of NFL free agency. And we are almost at 34,000 subscribers, so help us reach our next little baby milestone until we get to the big 4-0 here on the channel. Coming in at number 2, I've got DeAndre Swift from the Philadelphia Eagles. So, some background information on DeAndre Swift. Second-round pick by the Lions in 2020 out of UGA, and then he gets traded to the Eagles during the draft last year. He's got a lot of youth on his side. He turned 25 years old just last month, so he's got plenty of years ahead of him. He also comes off a career-high rushing yard season, but I do think he's going to cost you a bit more as he is younger and comes off a very impactful season. I think it's a 3-year, $18 million contract. That is an average of $6 million a season. An investment like this is more of a sign of we're not confident Nick Chubb is going to play a lot in 2024, and if he does, we're not confident he's going to be close to 100% even when he does come back. Because very often we have seen running backs come back from major injuries, and they still don't look even close to 100% for a handful of weeks. So DeAndre Swift is a much more serious investment into the running back room if the Browns feel like, hey, Chubb's not going to be ready for September, October, and possibly November. Let's not mess around here. Let's go get a bona fide starting running back like DeAndre Swift. And if we get Chubb back for December in a playoff push, awesome. We'll take it. But unlike the first three, this is not a placeholder signing. This is a major addition to the offense and someone you've got big plans for 2024, 2025, and maybe even into 2026. So this would be a big name running back to swing at in my eyes. Should Cleveland swing big? Or should they take, a little infield single? Just go get Zach Moss as a bridge for the first month and wait till Nick Chubb returns? Or, hey, Nick Chubb got ACL surgery in November last year. You should not hold your breath on him coming back in September or October. You should go find a new starting running back. And when Chubb comes back, awesome. The job can be his, and they can split carries and balance the workload. But let's not mess around here and act like Nick Chubb's going to be 100% by Halloween or anywhere before that. With all that being said, let's get into my number one free agent running back target, which is Tony Pollard from the Dallas Cowboys. I like Tony Pollard. He was definitely a fantasy football bust last season, but the former 2019 fourth-round pick out of Memphis still has some youth on his side. He turns 27 years old in April. I think he could get a 2-year, $12 million contract because he is coming off career lows in rushing and receiving average, which means he's not going to have maybe as big of a market as he could have had he not been franchise tagged last year and truly got to be a free agent in 2023. But when you look at the last two seasons, like 2022, breakout year for him, right? 1,000 yards, average 5.2 yards a pop. And then the following year, he plays one more game. He has 2 fewer yards, and he has about 60 more carries. That resulted in him dropping his average to 3.9 yards. I'm willing to bet on Tony Pollard to the tune of 2 years, $12 million, 2 years, $10 million, somewhere in that range, that Pollard, who did suffer a broken ankle at the end of the 2022 regular season, remember in the playoff game against the 49ers? So he came into the 2023 offseason recovered from a broken ankle. And as a running back, that's a big injury to go through. Got off to a slow start. Dallas turned into a pass-happy offense. They had a lot of success by feeding the football to CeeDee Lamb. And Tony Pollard got kicked to the curb a little bit. But now, fast forward, Tony Pollard's an extra year removed from that fractured ankle injury. He's no longer going to be looked at as the premier back, but he could split carries with Jerome Ford for the first half of the year and split carries until Nick Chubb, or once Nick Chubb returns. And we saw Tony Pollard do such a great job in that role with Ezekiel Elliott. So I'm not signing Tony Pollard to be this team's number one workhorse back like he was supposed to be for Dallas last year. I'm signing him to go back to what he did so well in Dallas, which was split touches with Zeke. And this time, it's splitting touches with Nick Chubb when Chubb returns. So those are my top 5 running backs that I would like to see the Browns pursue in free agency. I do have an off-the-wall question before we get on out of here. We're filming today's video during our live show, which airs every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And there's a pretty good chance that as the time you guys are watching this right now, I am in Florida on a bachelor party trip. So off-the-wall question, best place for a bachelor party? Let me know down below in the comment section. Not my bachelor party, someone else's. All right, Trace, which card do you want to go with?
You're talking about bachelor party.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the club, the 10 of clubs. So you like to see 10s at the club.
I like that. I'm going to go with a king of clubs.
I
For
love
the same logic, but king for the boys.
Hey, for the
boys.
I love it.
We had the club part right.
Really?
5 of clubs.
Oh.
5 of clubs. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Always appreciate those of you that take time out of your day to come hang out with us. We're going to sign off and see you all later.